Today, we're going to talk about HVIP in August this year. A couple things to get started. We're going to start with a quick review of what HVIP is. I'm sure most of you are aware, but we have some new folks around, so we're going to do a quick overview of HVIP. And then, as I'm sure everyone's very excited to hear, we have some implementation manual changes that we're going to go over to help you understand the program before it reopens. And then we'll do a quick update on the Innovative Small E-Fleet program. So a quick overview of HVIP. HVIP is an incentive project that was started by the California Air Resources Board in partnership with CalSTART, and it's designed to accelerate the adoption of cleaner, more efficient trucks and buses. To this point, over 14,000 vehicles have been funded, with over 2,500 fleets participating, and about $850 million in vouchers have been redeemed. So it's been a long-running and successful project. And a couple of the things that we're here to do, we're looking to accelerate market transformation for the cleanest advanced technologies as new technologies come out and they get better. CARB moves the HVIP program in that direction to help accelerate those technologies. We also want to support the goals laid out in the long-term heavy-duty investment strategy. By providing these incentives, we're hoping to drive purchase decisions toward cleaner vehicles. And we always want to maintain simplicity and a fleet-friendly process. CARB's regulatory programs are also very important, so we're going to make sure that this program helps support those. And we don't want to disrupt the market with unpredictable funding. So we want to maintain some stability in the market. Eventually, as things become more cost-effective and reach broader market penetration, we want to graduate those technologies and then move on to support equitable investments to make sure that everyone in the state can benefit from these new technologies. So if you want to participate in HVIP, it's a fairly simple process. What you want to do is go to californiahvip.org and look at the vehicle catalog. We have over 150 models in there that you have a choice to pick, and there's more and more being added all the time. From there, you can find an HVIP approved dealer, and that's not just one dealer throughout the state. It's any dealer that wants to participate can take the training and participate in the program. Once you find a dealer you're happy with, you negotiate and purchase the vehicle the same way you would at any other time, and just let them know you want to use HVIP funding, and you'll get a purchase order and an invoice with the cost deducted right at the time of sale. So there's no rebates or waiting for the money to come back to you. It's just a discount at the time of purchase. You and dealers cite terms and conditions, basically that ensures that the vehicle is operated for 3 years within the state of California. And then you'll get your new truck without needing to scrap an old truck. And there's no waiting for a rebate. And let's see, it looks like we have some questions coming on that will be answered later on in the presentation. So I'm going to keep going for now. But I'd actually like to invite my colleague Violetta, who's going to start talking about the changes to HVIP coming up.
Hi, everybody. My name is Violetta, and I wanted to give you the great news. HVIP will be reopening in a little over 2 weeks from now. So on September 9th, HVIP will be reopening. And that is great news to all the fleets. I know we have been waiting for this, so thankfully it's here now. And if we can just go on to the next slide. Some other great news, HVIP can be stacked with other eligible public incentives. So you can stack them with any state incentives any local incentives. I apologize, local incentives. So you can definitely ask your air districts or check any local funds. And there is also some qualifications. So up to 90% of the full vehicle cost will be covered for privately owned fleets, up to 100% for the publicly owned fleets. And HVIP cannot be applied to taxes or fees. And you can definitely look into the implementation manual. We will have a QR code later on, so you can scan it and access that, or you can log on to the HVIP website on page 38 of the implementation manual. And we can move to the next slide. So here are some changes that we will be reviewing. So we will be reviewing the adjusted voucher amounts, also the fleet size eligibility, the voucher caps, and also lease, rental, and fleet management companies' participation. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So let's just go over the fleet size. The new implementation manual does open to fleets of all sizes for this year. Small fleets are eligible for enhanced voucher amounts up to a maximum of 5 vehicles all-time total voucher requests. And here is the definition for who qualifies as a small fleet. You do need to have fewer than 20 vehicles and less than 15 million in annual revenue. Anyone who is a nonprofit are exempt from the revenue requirement. And the fleet size includes the fleet's vehicles domiciled anywhere globally under common ownership and control, and that definition can be found in the implementation manual, and the vehicles that are registered non-operational with California DMV and existing unredeemed vouchers. The fleet size excludes off-road vehicles, vehicles under 8,500 pounds, unregistered vehicles, and vehicles registered as non-revivable junk or dismantled. And if we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Adjuster voucher amounts. Here is another change. We have updated the funding amounts to a 2-tier voucher system. So we will have base amounts for the vouchers and also small business vouchers. And the plus-ups are now included directly into the voucher amount. So we will not be having any of those adjusting prices anymore. So just to give you an example, if we can move on to the next slide, please. Here is what the 2-tier system is going to look like. As you can see, on the left, you have your base voucher amount, and on the right, you have your small business voucher. So this is what the table is going to look like. And again, you can find this information on the implementation manual, and these slides will be available after the presentation on our website. We will email you with that information. But if we can move on to the next slide, please. And here is the public school bus and public transit bus voucher amount table. As you can see, we still have that 2-tier system. On the left, we have for the public school bus vouchers, we have the small fleet and the base amount. And then for the right, we have the public transit vouchers. Again, on the second to the left is where you have second to the right, sorry, is where you have the base amount. And on the very, very right one, you will have the small public transit bus voucher amounts. And if we can move on to the next slide. And right here, we have our amount for the vouchers for drayage and refuse. As you can see, As you can see on the left, we have our base amount, and on the right, we do have our small drayage and refuse vouchers. And if we can move on to the next slide, please. Now, here is the purchaser cap. We are now limited to 20 vouchers in unredeemed states given at any time. The cap of 20 is retroactive, and that applies to all vouchers as the purchaser, has unredeemed. And also for public school bus, it will be limited to 30. And for public transit, it will be limited to 50 voucher requests per calendar year. And again, just highlighting here that the small business voucher amount is only available on a maximum of 5 vouchers of all time. This applies to the truck voucher requests and also for people who have used ISEF or the small vouchers prior to this implementation manual release. They will count toward the lifetime cap of 5. And if we can move on to the next slide, please. And here we have the lease, rental, and fleet management participation. So these companies who do leases, rentals, they are able to participate and receive base vouchers. These companies cannot receive small fleet voucher amounts participating in HVIP. And also the companies are prohibited from acting as a dealer on HVIP voucher transactions. These companies, if they are associated with a manufacturer, they're also prohibited from being a purchaser. But I do want to say that this will be available for ISEF and standard HVIP. So that is good. And just finally to highlight some other changes, if we can move on to the next slide, please. And here are some other changes that did happen this year for the implementation manual. The in-flight vouchers count toward the fleet size. So any in-flight vouchers are part of fleet size determination. The charging plan requirement is removed. So unless you are domiciling your vehicles at a residential address, you do not need to present a detailed charging plan anymore. And there will be tracking, enhanced tracking for funding to disadvantaged community areas. So we will continue to track any voucher requested from a priority population. There is a change in the bulk requirement. It has been removed for fleets of all sizes, the bulk purchase requirement. And also for the small fleets, there is a $5 million amount that will be specifically reserved for small fleets to protect your participation in the program. And one last change here, for any vehicle conversions, HVIP will not fund plug-in hybrid vehicle conversions. And those are the changes, the main changes that have happened in the new implementation manual. Please feel free to ask us some questions in the Q&A section. Brian, I'll pass it over to you now.
Thanks, Violetta. Appreciate your insights there. One more update here before we get to the questions. I see there's been plenty rolling into the chat and the Q&A, so we'll get those answered in just a little bit. But first, I want to give a quick update on ISEF. ISEF is the Innovative Small E-Fleet program. It was launched in 2021, and the idea was to help reduce the purchase price of zero-emission vehicles for small fleets, but also to provide an experimental space where innovative solutions like all-inclusive leases, truck as a service, or rentals could get funding through the HVIP program. So ISEF's a little bit different in that in a regular HVIP transaction, you have a dealer and a purchaser. In ISEF, typically there's a dealer and then a provider who provides the leasing type service or a rental, things like that. And then the eligible small fleet participant works with provider. So the dealer provides the truck, the provider provides the service, and then the fleet participant gets to use the vehicle. And just a quick reminder, small fleet is now a 20 or fewer vehicles and less than 15 million in annual revenue. That's for both standard and ISEF. Just so people are aware, there's some new options coming. We have a used truck voucher pilot program in the works. We also have some programs about advanced fleet management assistance and assisting with insurance. We're anticipating that those new options will be available in the next year or two. And ISEF itself will reopen with new guidelines this fall, probably the last I heard, maybe mid-October, somewhere in that range. So if you are looking for more flexibility than HVIP offers, you'll have an opportunity coming up soon with ISEF. Of course, if you'd prefer, there's always the standard HVIP option if that works better for your operational needs. So where can you find additional details, all the nitty-gritty important pieces that we may not have the time to talk about today? Please use the QR code in the screen or go to californiahvip.org/im. The very top link on that page is the new implementation manual. It's 130 pages of riveting reading. I'm sure we'll all enjoy it. And then if you have any questions, need assistance, CalFleet Advisor is here for you. We are a free technical assistance program paid for through HVIP funding. So there's no cost to the fleets at all. And you can get our help through calfleetadvisor.org or scan the QR code on your page. Use a quick question form there you can fill out, and we're happy to help you out. Or just email us at calfleetadvisor@californiahvip.org. I also noticed that we have a lot of questions in the chat and in the QA about why certain policies were enacted. You know, we don't work for CARB, so we can't necessarily comment on those, but if you have those questions, I'd love to direct you to hvip@arb.ca.gov, and the HVIP team at CARB would be happy to chat with any policy questions you have and take any comments you might have for the next round, which is probably going to be coming up toward the later part of this year, where you'll have the opportunity to make public comments, work in public work groups, and make an impact on the future of HVIP. So that being said, we're going to move on to Q&A. I'm going to start with some questions that we received prior to the webinar, and we'll go from there to the chat and the Q&A, and then we'll leave some time for live questions. So starting with some questions, we got several questions both in the chat and in previous about CNG or RNG. HVIP is dedicated to the latest and cleanest technologies, and CNG has been around for a while, and it is not as clean as battery or hydrogen in CARB's estimation. So CARB has made the choice to only fund battery electric and hydrogen vehicles at this time. If other technologies come up that are as clean or cleaner, then CARB will be happy to reevaluate that. But for the moment, battery electric vehicles and hydrogen powered vehicles are what are eligible. And you can find the list of the eligible vehicles in the vehicle catalog at californiahvip.org. Had a couple questions about the size of the vouchers and modifiers. As you can see from the charts that we had in the presentation, it's been simplified quite a bit, so there's no more math to do. You don't need to worry about if something is in a DAC or if you're one street over. Effectively, it's either just the base voucher amount or the small business increased voucher, that enhanced voucher that we talked about. So when you talk about enhancements and plus ups and things like that, those are all included now in the small business voucher. And you can see the different charts in the implementation manual or in the presentation when we post it online. Had a couple questions about stacking. Stacking is allowed as long as both programs allow it. HVIP is usually pretty open about allowing it. There are some state programs that have specific emissions reductions that they're looking for that may not allow stacking. So it will depend on depending on the specific program, if you're trying to stack multiple sources of state funds. But for the most part, stacking is usually allowed. Certainly with local programs, it is very frequently allowed. Just keep in mind that HVIP can, for private fleets, fund no more than 90% of the cost of the vehicle, and for public fleets, it's up to 100%. So for things like taxes and fees, HVIP can't fund those, and the total incentive amount amongst all of the programs that you might use can exceed 90% if you want to use HVIP. We had some questions about if HVIP vouchers apply toward various vehicles. Again, I'd encourage you to look at the vehicle catalog. It's over 150 models in there, and anything that is applicable is in the catalog. If it's on the catalog, HVIP can apply. If it's not, it means that it doesn't apply yet. If those manufacturers choose to apply and put their vehicles in the program, then they might be added later on. But any vehicle that you might want to see is in that catalog. So that's the first place I would check. Had a question about if cars are eligible. HVIP is eligible only for vehicles 8,500 pounds and up used in commercial service. So this would not be the light duty incentive program. I believe California has other programs that they're working on to add incentives for light duty, but cars are not eligible through HVIP. And then looks like we had that one already answered. All right, I'm going to move on to the chat now. So bear with me for a moment. Some question. Oh, it looks like I had some echoing earlier. I apologize. I've switched microphones and hopefully that helps. If not, someone please let me know. If you'd like to use a financing partner, how do you include that within your application PO and what needs to be included in the title? That's going to be something you work out with either your ISEF provider or your HVIP dealer. You do it the same way you normally would. HVIP is just there to provide financing assistance at the front, and HVIP is not involved in whatever other financing you may choose to use. Had a question, what does 90% of the full vehicle cost means? The vehicle's OEM also has incentives, and there are other private incentives like Costco membership is the final sales cost after incentives. So that yes, if the vehicle costs say $100,000, then the total incentive amount can be no more than $90,000 for a private fleet. And so HVIP, just want to make sure that those funds, you're not expecting funds beyond that 90%. What about emergency vehicles? Are you still including the fleet size? I think this question might actually be about regulations, but yes, any vehicle over 8,500 pounds that meets those criteria that we mentioned in the previous slide is included in your fleet size. What constitutes a small school district? Again, it's under 20 vehicles. Do trailers count as a vehicle? No, trailers are not vehicles. They have to be registered as a vehicle with the DMV. And trailers do not have a motor, so they're not a vehicle. Had a comment about warranty decisions and getting business history and financial health for OEMs. Can't really comment on that. I do not work for CARB, but I'd encourage you, if you are concerned about these issues, to attend the public work groups and make your voice heard so that CARB can consider them going forward. I do know there has been discussion of this kind of thing in the past, and so CARB may implement it in the future. But again, that'd be something you want to let them know so that they're aware of your concerns here. Question is only available for small fleets under 20 vehicles. I'm not sure what that was in context regarding, but yeah, the small fleet definition for the extended voucher, the enhanced voucher amount, is for 20 vehicles or fewer. How long are vouchers good for? Vouchers are good initially for 18 months, but they can be renewed if you're having trouble with getting a good delivery date, or if you're having perhaps an infrastructure delay, you can apply to have them extended. Are flatbed class 4 and 6 trucks eligible for any HVIP category? If not, is it possible to comment on the rationale? I can't speak to the rationale. Again, that's something you want to talk to CARB about, but there are a variety of flatbed vehicles available in a variety of vehicle classes that I encourage you to go to the vehicle catalog. Something to note is that sometimes people are concerned that a particular vehicle is not in the catalog. That could just be because the manufacturer chose not to make it available for the program. That's up to the manufacturers and the dealers if they want to participate. So if a vehicle is not in there, it may be just because the OEM chose not to participate. Can city municipalities participate in utilizing these vouchers? Absolutely, yes. There's plenty of state and local government fleets that have used HVIP vouchers in the past, and I'm sure they will continue to do so in the future. Can I discuss truck as a service regulations for ISEF? I can't. Regulations are not something that HVIP is really involved in. That'd be a better question for CARB. But if you want me to follow up, we can certainly follow up with you and find out what you're looking for and get you in touch with the appropriate people. When stacking HVIP with other incentives, when and how is this introduced in the voucher process? I would encourage you to make that known. It's and when you initially apply for the funding, because you don't want to have to go back and have it revised afterwards. So you really want to have that right up front. So I believe the funding for HVIP is 132 million. Do you know how they allocate to each classification? So you might be talking about, that's the next funding year. That's the new funding plan where there's about 135 million coming to HVIP. So that's exciting for next year. The funding from this year is from previously canceled vouchers. So it is not allocated in a particular manner, except that 5 million is being reserved for small fleets. So there's no real worries if you have a large truck or a small truck. You're welcome to apply for HVIP either way for the current funding year. When will the appendices be available? The link directs me to IM. Yep, some of the appendices are still being worked on. I'd encourage you to keep an eye out on our email. We'll be certain to let you know when those are available. For example, the ISEF appendix, it looks like we might have it in the middle of October sometime, but we'll let you know as soon as they're available. Can you apply for public transit vehicle vouchers this year that are going to be procured during the following year? I believe that is yes, as long as you are not going over the vehicle caps. And if there is a delay or something like that, then that's not going to be a problem. You'll be able to get an extension if need be. If the end user breaches the HVIP terms, is there a funding clawback? That would probably be a CARB enforcement question, so I won't comment on that here. I'll just encourage people to know that there are some terms and conditions that you need to abide by. And the primary one is using the vehicle within California for 3 years. Can HVIP be stacked with Invest Clean and VW mitigation? I'm not familiar with the rules on Invest Clean off the top of my head. I know it has been stacked with VW in the past, but there's a whole section on stacking in the IM. I'd encourage you to check it out. There's specific rules for a variety of different programs in there. Is there a time requirement for placing trucks in service after utilizing HVIP vouchers? Yeah, HVIP vouchers are generally good for up to 18 months. There are extensions available. So they're considered in service once they're actually delivered to the fleet. To clarify, an ISEF in the 5 per small business, what if you're trucking as a service provider? Is it 5 per as the trucking as a service provider or per fleet? It's per fleet. And again, the ISEF rules will be coming soon. ISEF is not reopening just yet, but we'll see those in a little bit, probably in mid-October, and then you'll have a lot of clarity on what ISEF is looking for there. How much total funding is available for this round? I don't have that handy right now, but there should be plenty of funding for to reopen and get us through until hopefully until the new funding comes through in the next budgetary year. Okay, a question here about delivery date timelines. Assuming all things are done properly, how long does it take to get the funding? That's going to depend a lot on the dealer and on the fleet and which vehicle they're looking for. If the truck is on the lot, it can be very rapid. If you're waiting for delivery and they need to match the VIN and ensure that the right truck is delivered, that can take much longer. So if you're looking to get in ahead of any particular deadlines, I encourage you to purchase vehicles that are kind of available on the lot already. Yes, we'll post the presentation after the webinar. Had a question about small fleet voucher caps of 5, how this relates to existing vouchers. Let me go back to that slide. Okay, so talking about small fleet sizes, the enhanced vouchers apply to small fleets. That means those with 20 or fewer vehicles or 15 million or less in annual revenue. Please note that purchases by nonprofits are exempt from the revenue requirement. So if you meet those criteria, you have the opportunity to use the enhanced voucher amount, which is typically more than double the base voucher amount. A fleet can have a maximum of 5 all-time voucher requests for the enhanced vouchers, and previous vouchers that got enhanced vouchers, like under ISEF, count toward that 5 vehicle cap all time. So if you already have had 5 small fleet vouchers with previous ISEF purchases, things like that, then you're welcome to use the base voucher at this point, but you are limited to 5 total with the new rules. Are there any criteria about how many miles need to be driven? The criteria is about how much time it spends in California, not necessarily how many miles are driven. Can HVIP be stacked with ZESB? No, ZESB is part of a different program, and it is administered by HVIP, but it's not going to be stacked with HVIP. Are Class 8 terminal tractors eligible for HVIP? I don't believe there are any in the catalog. I believe they were covered in the core incentive program, the California core incentive program. But again, any questions about what vehicles are eligible, I encourage you to check the catalog on the HVIP website. So I had a question about what constitutes a leasing company in regards to HVIP. So the new rule for leasing companies that's expanding eligibility is to large fleet companies who purchase trucks for themselves and then lease it out. If you're going through a kind of a standard lease like you have seen in HVIP in the past, there's really no difference there. This is for a company that is looking to rent vehicles that they own instead of leasing them so that the fleet is in charge of it, so to speak. What's the best way to connect with the CalFleet Advisor? Easiest way, just go to calfleetadvisor.org, fill out our quick form, and someone will be in contact with you very shortly. You can also email us at calfleetadvisor@californiahvip.org. What documentation is needed to provide for less than 50 million avenue revenue? I'd encourage you to check out the implementation manual. There's a checklist in there with all the documentation you might need. Can you stack 2 HVIP vouchers? No, you cannot stack 2 HVIP vouchers. Is there minimum age of the fleet? For example, does business need to be established for 2 years, 5 years, 3 months? Oh, I see. Okay, thank you, Parker, for letting me know. CORB did remove terminal tractors. Yeah, electric terminal tractors are pretty mature technology. And so I believe that CARB's taking the direction to move on to newer technologies that still need additional funding rather than continuing to fund those technologies. But if you're concerned about that, again, something to definitely take up with them in the public workshops coming up in the next months. In regards to the age of the fleet, I will double check this, but I believe you need to have been registered with the Secretary of State. Let me double check this real quick. Yes, you must have been in business for at least 1 year prior to submitting a request for an HVIP voucher. 1 year for that. The difference between a public transit voucher and the small public transit voucher, the difference there is simply the size of the fleet. Go back to that here. So small public transit vouchers are eligible for the enhanced voucher amounts, whereas a regular public transit, those with more than 20 vehicles and such, are eligible for just the regular voucher amount. How can additional vehicles that are 2B be added to HVIP, like the ProMaster EV, for example? If it's not already in there, then that would be something that the manufacturer needs to add. We're not looking to exclude any vehicles or any particular brands. So it's just being something that the manufacturer would need to be request. And if it's an eligible vehicle type, then it can be added to the eligible vehicle table. When will you announce how much funding is available? CARB will announce that before it opens on the 9th. I don't have a date for you, unfortunately, on that. As I mentioned in my previous question, it seems that many dealerships, specifically for step vans, have a long wait list for HVIP clients and thus no longer accepting new clients. Is this truly the case? Or are these dealerships just trying to make us purchase without HVIP? Unfortunately, I can't speak for any particular dealership. I don't know what their particular policies are, and we can't really control that. I'd encourage you, though, if you're not happy with their dealership, we can help you find an alternate one if you need help finding a dealership. If you contact California Advisor, we have to provide you a list of all the dealerships that cover your vehicle type, and you can contact them from there. Do you know if HVIP will allocate specific funding for each class type? No. Class 4, Class 5 doesn't matter. The funding is available for any vehicle size purchase. Is the weight requirement curb weight or gross weight? It's GVWR. Will all the questions answered be available to access after the webinar? Yeah, we can publish that as well. Do canceled vouchers count toward my max voucher limit? No, they would cancel vouchers. The money was never paid out, so it doesn't go toward your maximum voucher limit. If you're talking about the 5 voucher small business enhancement. If an organization works with a fleet management company instead of one of the approved dealerships, can they still access the HVIP incentives? As long as the dealer is an HVIP approved dealer, I don't see any issue with that. And there's new rules this year where fleet management companies, rental companies, leasing companies will have access to HVIP as well. Previously, HVIP funding was not available if a purchase was to meet an ACF compliance milestone. Is that still in place for municipalities? My understanding is that ACF is currently in place for state and local government fleets, but this would be an excellent question to ask the ACF folks over at CARB. Is there a cap on the number of dealerships per vehicle? I don't believe so. I don't think there's any limitation there other than the dealers will need to go through training and want to participate in the program. Will the HVIP waitlist entities be moved to a newer funding table or at the funding level base plus et cetera from the initial application? If you have an existing application, it should be following the existing rules, I believe. And if you're on a wait list with a dealership, then when they put the application in, it would be under the new rules. All right, that's everything in the chat for now. I'm going to go over here to the question and answers. Looks like we talked about some of these. So I'm just going to run through the ones that are topics that we haven't covered. Are churches eligible for HVIP? Yep, there's no reason why they wouldn't be. Would they need to provide the same tax forms as a nonprofit? Yes, if you're a registered nonprofit, then you'll need to provide the same documentation that a nonprofit would. Question about particular provision talking about, okay, I see. So their question is about what equipment is included in the purchase vehicle price. Basically, when you purchase the vehicle, the equipment that is part of the truck is the purchase price. If you purchase the vehicle and then parts are added on afterward, that would not be included in the purchase price of the vehicle. Will HVIP cover a fuel cell electric bus conversion? If it is in the vehicle catalog, I would encourage you to check that out. If you can find what you're looking for in there, then it's covered. If not, then perhaps you can work with the OEM to see if they can get their product into the catalog. Some questions about RNG and CNG. Again, those are not covered by HVIP vouchers. Scrolling through here, we talked about public school bus vouchers already. EPTO, it's a separate set of voucher recommendations for EPTO, and you can find them on page 40. Let's see here. Starts on page, excuse me. I scrolled around and now it's in the wrong spot. Give me just a moment. Okay, so you're going to want to start looking at page 35. That's 35 to 37. There's an EPTO table there, and it talks about the voucher amounts for EPTO. But basically, starting the basic vehicle incentive for an EPTO is starting from 3 kilowatt energy storage that starts at 20,000 and goes up to 50,000 for those that are over 25 kilowatt hours. People are asking if they can reach out to their dealers early. Have the dealers submit the application on September 9th. Yep, that seems like a good idea to get your paperwork in line so that it's ready to go when it reopens. And we talked about that one already. We talked about that one. Is there a comprehensive resource I'd recommend for available funding for electric school bus in California? Yes, I'd recommend you check out the implementation manual. Again, there's a QR code in the webinar. I'll put that on screen right now. And in addition, there's also the ZESB IM, which you should be able to find at that same page. So if you have any questions about particular rules, scan this QR code, and this is the best way to get the right information for you. I am still confused on the difference between ISEF and small customer designation for regular HVIP. Are leasing rentals allowed on a regular HVIP or just ISEF? So regular purchases, like a standard purchase or a long-term, like 3-month lease, or excuse me, 3-year lease, are allowed under standard ISEF with the enhanced voucher amount. So that's going to be for your regular purchases and the standard type leases. If there are alternative services like truck as a service or maybe a short-term rental, a non-standard lease, those would come under the innovative small e-fleet program. Can privately owned buses which serve public school districts receive the public school voucher amount if the school districts are small? I don't believe, and I'm not sure on this. I'm going to double check. I don't believe privately owned buses are eligible for the public school bus voucher, but I will double check that, and we can send it out later. Some of these are repeats, so I'm just going to scroll through them. Some policy issues here. Again, not much I can speak to on that, but I would encourage you to speak at the public work groups and CARB will announce those ahead of time. So in the next few months, there should be more public work groups for the heavy duty investment and the funding plan for next year. And I encourage you to attend those and make your voice heard then. Can you please confirm that clean truck check compliance is a hard requirement? In general, yes. You will have to be compliant with all CARB regulations for your fleet before CARB is going to provide with incentive funding. Question about Native American tribes. They are welcome to participate in ISEF. And yep, and in HVIP. Again, question on the age of the fleet, at least 1 year in, registration with the California Secretary of State. Question about cross-border fleets. Yes, cross-border fleets can participate as long as you're, I believe they have to operate 50% in California, but yes, cross-border fleets are eligible. The maximum amount of vehicles under the new rules under ISEF would be 5. Anything with the enhanced voucher is going to be 5. When will the new voucher forms be available? I don't believe there's. I believe that's something that the dealer will be able to access, and then they can help you out with that. The criteria as it relates to socially and economically disadvantaged communities. So the last number I saw was that over 55% of the funding has gone toward DACs. And so going forward, CARB is elected to ensure that they continue making strides in those areas by having enhanced tracking of where the funds are going and to ensure that DACs are benefiting from this voucher funding. But there's no longer a 15% increase for disadvantaged individual vouchers. Instead, they're looking to track this on a program-wide basis. Can you work directly with an OEM even if they have an active dealer? If the OEM is also considered a dealer in HVIP and have gone through the training, then I don't see any issue with that. Yes, community college districts are eligible. What can you do advanced to be ready for reopening? I'd encourage you to find the vehicle you want, get in contact with the dealer that you'd like to, let them know you'd like to use HVIP funding, and get all of your documentation available and ready to go. So it's ready to go once the program opens. Yes, the 135 million I was referring to is I believe the HEMO settlement funds. It is not separate from HEMO. Question regarding, this looks like it's from a dealer from the VPC. I'm not sure about that. I'm not an expert on the VPC, but if you send us an email, I'd be happy to get you over to the right people. Will the model years on the catalog be updated to newer years before the program opens again? The model years are updated as soon as the OEM provides them to us. So they have to get their paperwork and then submit it. And then as soon as it's approved, then we update the vehicle catalog as soon as possible. Someone had a question about stacking incentives, for example, with ISEF. If the ISEF voucher doesn't exceed 90, but the additional voucher would cover more than 90, the total voucher amount cannot cover more than 90%. So if you are stacking funds, then the ISEF or the HVIP voucher would be reduced by the amount in order to get to 90%. The idea is to make sure that the fleet is not receiving more than 90% in incentive funding. Purchaser wants to lease the own, be eligible. That has been done before. It might be an ISEF, depending on the structure of the deal. Can extended warranties or service contracts be included in the selling price? That has not historically been available in standard ISEF. It might be possible in ISEF as an innovative opportunity, but it wouldn't be available in standard ISEF. How long do I estimate the funds to last since large fleets are now included? I wouldn't want to try and answer that. I honestly don't know. It's going to depend a lot on how much people want to participate and the total amount that they come up with for how much funding is available. How do you check if the company has less than 15 million annual revenue? I'd encourage you to check out the implementation manual, and there's a checklist in there for everything that you need. I think I've gotten through, one more. Are used vehicles eligible? Would they even have used vehicles available? The used vehicle market is pretty small right now. Used vehicles are not currently eligible for standard HVIP, but as I mentioned with the small ISEF program, we're looking in the next 1 to 2 years to maybe make a used truck voucher pilot program available. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check in with the public work groups for that program and make sure that you have your voice heard. All right, switching back to the webinar chat, I think I have answered a question about how does it work for transit fleets voucher caps. The transit fleet voucher cap supersedes the normal. So whatever the rules are for transit, in this case, it looks like 50. That's going to be supersede. Will today's Q&A be made available? Yes, we'll have a document that we publish along with our webinar slides that will have answers to these questions. If lead times are more than 18 months for delivery of those vouchers canceled, no, you can apply for an extension at that point. Do large fleets have to have less than 15 million in revenue? No. The standard voucher is available to fleets of any revenue. So they would only need to have 15 million if they were applying for the small business voucher, which they would not be able to do because they have more than 20 vehicles. The 20 outstanding reservation limit, I believe that does flow to the end fleet. Are there additional incentives to help set up a charging station for your business? Yes. If you go to ENERGIIZE, energize with 2 I's.org, that is the state of California's charging incentive program. Are ISEF providers eligible to serve as lessors to utilize HVIP vouchers and then to lease the trucks? Perhaps separately, but you're going to want a particular truck's going to be in one program or the other. 135 million for next year. Yes, that's the Hino settlement. That is my understanding. All right, I think I've answered everything I can see. And I apologize if I missed yours. Again, please feel free to email us at calfleetadvisor@californiahvip.org if I missed your question, or if you have additional questions, be happy to help you out there. But otherwise, thank you so much for attending. And I'll stick around for a few minutes in case other questions come in. But otherwise, thanks for attending and have a great day. I had a question, does HVIP cover charger costs? Not typically, no. HVIP is just there for the vehicle price. Question about Fortune 400 list. I'm not aware of any limitation there. I can certainly look into that for you in the future. Wait, I had a question, EPTO stack on top of chassis. I don't believe that's how it works. I think that would be a separate voucher. Daniela, we're going to post a list of the questions we answered, but if you have a particular question, go ahead and send us an email, calfleetadvisor@californiahvip.org, and we'll make sure that you get your question answered. Does HVIP stack with the EPA's South Coast Air Quality Management District? That is a pretty new program, and I have not seen their rules yet. I don't believe that there would be any problem on the HVIP side, but you might want to check with AQMD on that one. Are sole proprietor businesses eligible? Yes, as long as you've been registered with the Secretary of State for at least a year. Regarding the question on small fleet voucher applying to small public transit school buses and small public transit vouchers, I believe the rules for those are different under their own appendix, but we'll double check on that one and get back to you. I had a question about what documentation is required. I'd encourage you to, and I'll put that QR code back up on the screen, encourage you to go to the implementation manual for a full checklist of what is required. They have everything you need there. Question about HVIP saying that new businesses are eligible under ISEF. ISEF is currently closed, so when they reopen and when they republish their appendix, we'll know what those rules are, but I don't believe that the information is available yet. Regarding the South Coast Air Quality Management District funds, they offer up to 100% including taxes and fees. So could you still leverage ISEF considering that 90% taxes, 90% limit and taxes excluded? So no. If you are getting 100% of the cost of the vehicle from AQMD, then HVIP is not going to help with a total incentive amount of for a private business of more than 90% and excluding taxes. So it might be beneficial to you in that particular case. Perhaps you just use the AQMD funds instead. Los Angeles, Long Beach, Port Drayage bonus plus amount clarified yet. I believe that is coming soon. I don't believe they've published that yet, but look, keep an eye out for word on that in the next couple of weeks. They haven't given us a publication date for the new ICEF IM. I would anticipate probably sometime in mid-October, but that's just a guess. So keep an eye out. We'll be happy to let people know on our mailing list when that's available. To Erica's question about in-flight vouchers, it sounds like an issue with the voucher processing center, something to do with the software. Unfortunately, I am not an expert on that, but I'll be sure to follow up with those folks and get you an answer on that. Although, if the fleet size is 0 and it's the fleet's first ZEV, then the voucher you're applying for, 0 would be the correct amount because there is no voucher in flight until you have applied for it. So that first voucher, yes, if the fleet size was 0 before you applied for the voucher, as you're applying for the voucher, it's still 0. Once you hit apply and it's in the system, then they would have 1. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. So again, I want to thank everyone for attending, and we'll send out an email when the slides and the Q&A and the presentation are available on our website. Thanks again for attending, and have a great day.